Mounting concerns over the possibility of another American war in the Middle East. President Trump says he's considering strikes on Iran as the two sides negotiate a new deal on Tehran's nuclear program. A third round of talks are reportedly set to take place in Geneva on Thursday. Here's what the U.S. Special Envoy leading those talks had to say about the state of negotiations.
I don't want to use the word frustrated. It's almost because he understands he's got plenty of alternatives. But it's curious. He's curious as to why they haven't, I don't want to use the word capitulated, but why they haven't capitulated. Why under this sort of pressure with the amount of sea power, naval power that we have over there, why they haven't come to us and said, we profess that we don't want a weapon. So here's what we're prepared to do. And yet it's hard to sort of get them to that place.
Joining me now, the former Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs and former ambassador to Pakistan, Lebanon, and Jordan, David Hale. Ambassador, thanks for joining me. So the Pentagon is preparing the largest military buildup in the Middle East in 2 decades, even as the White House claims it wants a deal. On Thursday, President Trump said he would decide in the next 10 to 15 days whether to continue diplomacy or order military strikes. What is most likely to happen?
Well, I think it's important to put this in the context of what the president wants, and I do believe he wants a deal. I don't believe he wants a war. The problem is the gap between America and Iran on the issues at stake here, enrichment, ballistic missiles, malign behavior of Iran in the region, that those differences are so wide that it's hard to see how a deal can come forth in a time frame that's realistic, because, of course, no American president can maintain, in my view anyway, this level of advanced deployment and readiness in the Middle East indefinitely. So hence the frustration that you just heard Steve Witkoff talk about is not necessarily so much about the fact that he has so many options, but rather that the fact that we have this military deployment kind of creates a use it or lose it mentality, because we can't be there forever.
But, Ambassador, Trump hasn't clearly explained to Congress or the country what he hopes to accomplish by striking Iran potentially. Trump said it would pressure Tehran into giving up its nuclear program. But then he has also talked about regime change and supporting the protesters. So what is the goal here? Will Trump push for regime change?
Well, I think watching President Trump over the years, we all know he's highly flexible. I mean, he's pragmatic. And he may adjust the goals depending on what the opportunities present. Iran has suffered a tremendous reversal of fortune, and the Iranians themselves don't seem to act like they understand that. I think it's because they're trying to maintain a very tenuous situation in their own country, calm their own people, try to assert a belligerency that they can't really sustain. So I suspect, to answer your question, is that Trump's preference is to use the credible threat of military force to bring them to the negotiating table, but I don't think that's likely to create real flexibility on the part of the Iranians, because they can't afford that. So then the president faces this dilemma. And we may ultimately have to see force used, if not for regime change, then at least for fundamental policy changes.
Trump insisted those strikes 8 months ago, sir, obliterated Iran's nuclear program, despite reports that the attacks only set it back a few months or so. And then you have Iran's foreign minister saying the U.S. did not ask Tehran to stop enriching uranium during the recent talks. So take a listen to some of what he said today.
We have every right to enjoy a peaceful nuclear energy, including enrichment. How we use this right is something, related to us only. The enrichment is a sensitive part of our negotiation. The American team know about, they knows our position, we knows their position, and we have already exchanged our concerns.
So what do you make of all this? And do you think another strike would be more successful on nuclear targets?
Well, I think this first strike was probably pretty successful. The Iranians always back off when faced with determined use of force, and that's what happened last summer. I don't think we should necessarily take at face value, obviously, anything that an Iranian leader says. It's all meant to sort of create a mind space for these negotiations and for dealing with the U.S. threat. I think at the end of the day, the Iranians do not have the military wherewithal to counter what could potentially be a Trump option. So they're trying everything they can to sustain these talks, pretend that they can somehow get something going there that will forestall and hopefully create a situation in which the Americans lose interest, because they know from 40 years of history that there is a problem of persistence and attention span on the American side that they're trying to play. Trump's showing the opposite, and hopefully that will sink in on the Iranian side.
Last question, sir. If there are military strikes by the United States, do you think this is a more drawn-out, more protracted situation than, let's say, the 12-day war that was experienced recently between Israel and Iran, or would it be much more succinct and stop it?
Well, that really depends on the president's intentions, which I can't pretend to know. But just reading the situation, I think he will want a relatively brief, attack that's devastating, probably that goes after the command and control of the regime over its security establishment. So they have even less of an ability to repress their people and counter us and attack Israel and that kind of thing, to bring them back to the talks. But again, you got this fundamental problem. Iran doesn't go away, and they're not really going to give us, I think, an improved JCPOA, which the president would need politically to justify all of this. So that, I think, does lead to a little bit of a standoff.
Former Ambassador David Hale. We shall see. Thank you very much for weighing in, sir.